Cool. Well, I'm going to get started because I got a lot to cover today and people can just jump on as they are able to. So today we're going to talk about, I've been kind of going back and forth on how much I want to get into each of these things, but I think it's going to be an overview today. And if there's something that you feel like you want to dive into further, we'll talk about that, or let me know at the end, or put it in the comments. Because it's a lot to cover and we have covered some of this before. Basically, what I'm going to talk about today is how successful agents approach life and business. Another way to look at it is traits of successful agents. And really, this could pretty much all translate to any entrepreneurial position, anybody who owns a business of their own. And I think the reason that it's good to cover this is because I feel like people get started and they're like, I think I'm going to like this. I think I'm a good fit. I really don't know. What should I be focusing on? It's easy to get caught up in the tasks of it instead of stepping back and looking at it from a broader viewpoint in terms of how should I be approaching my business in general. And this is a number of traits to really for you to hone in on and to refine and to find where your strengths are. It's not a list to tell you if you don't possess all these things at 100%, you're not going to be successful. That's not the intention. But it's to say, like, these are the things to really be aware of and to focus your time and energy on to build your business, to maintain a successful business, and to also have a life worth living, because that's a big part of what we do here at Keller Williams. It's not all about business. If you ignore the rest of your life, something in the rest of your life could easily tear down whatever you've built in your business, and really affect your quality of life. So it's not just about business, it's also about life outside of business and different aspects of your life, to maintain that counterbalance. So these things apply to those as well. And I'm just going to touch on each of them and kind of fold in some of the pieces of those top five and the things that you're focusing on as a newer agent. And then we can go back in depth with some of these at another class. Sound good? Cool. So I went back and forth because I've folded some together. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll call it 8 now. I was trying to keep it to 5 and it's just not doable, you guys. And 10 seemed overwhelming. So here you go. 8 traits of successful real estate agents. So the first one is huge. It is one of the things I look for when I meet new agents to see what their trajectory might be like, to see how quickly they might jump into business, is driven. Driven. If you are driven, if you are focused on your why, if you have like a fire in your belly to have success, to do this well, to serve people in a quality way, that will push you through the hard times. Being driven is huge, huge. And understanding your motivation or what pushes and drives you is really important, because when things get tough or when you feel energy waning, it's you're going to need to tap into that. So really taking the time to figure out what your why is really important. What is your motivation? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to make money? Why do you want to serve people? Why do you want to sell homes, build your business? What is your why? So that's a hard question, but it's worth just brainstorming, taking a bunch of notes, and then kind of refining it as you go, kind of pull out the things that really, the stuff that like makes you tear up or like hits you in the gut, like that you should have like a physical reaction. It should really set you on fire. So driven is huge. That is what helps you focus. And for some of us, myself included, there's some competitive nature playing in there. And when I am feeling low or challenged or fall off track, one of the things that helps pull me back, my why is the strongest, but also my competitive nature really does help. So if you have that, tap into it, be aware of it. This is not I'm going to shove everybody down on the side of the road to get to the front of the line. This is like I'm competing with myself. I'm trying to do better than last year. I want to give a better experience to my clients than anybody else. It's that kind of competition. But that can help you. And when you're tracking your numbers, that also can be a drive or a motivator for you. So being driven is huge. If you don't feel like you have that fire in your belly, you got to find it. You got to find your why. You've got to find your motivation. Otherwise, what is the point, right? Like, what's pushing you? So that's a big one. The next one is, and we did have a class about this, is resilient. You have got to be able to bounce back. This business, and any business, especially when you're an entrepreneur, is going to have its fair share of the word no. And people who don't want to work with you, or don't follow up, or work with somebody else, or, you know, you think that you had the perfect listing at the right price and everything, and then the market doesn't respond. You've got to be able to bounce back. So if you haven't watched that class a few weeks ago, we did a class on bouncing back. And resilience. So you've got to be resilient. It's a good muscle to exercise. It's something you can develop. It's also known as grit. That's a big word right now. And it all comes from confidence, right? If you're confident that you are doing your very best and putting everything into best intentions to help your clients, then if there's a setback, you can't blame yourself. You've done everything you could. You can see this as an opportunity. But go back to your confidence. That's huge. And it doesn't mean you're a big ego. For some people that works, but it doesn't have to mean that you're a jerk. It just means that you're confident in your abilities, you're confident in your relationship building, you're confident in how you're representing your clients, how you're doing your business. And that confidence comes from having those good basic things down. And this is the stuff that's in the top 5. So it's really being well practiced and well versed in the offer to purchase, having something put together for a buyer consultation, having a listing presentation ready to go. You know how to do a CMA, you understand what it means, you know what's in the listing contract, you know what's in the condition report. This is helping build your confidence as a competent agent, right? Having that information, knowing it, feeling comfortable with it is going to build your confidence. So that's big. The next one is intentional and purposeful. And if you ever talk to Charlie or sit in on one of our meetings, you're going to hear him say this at some point. Really successful people are very intentional and purposeful. They're intentional about their time. They're intentional about their energy. They're intentional about where they're going, their goal setting. They're tracking their goals, their progress. They're coming back to their goals and making adjustments. They're very intentional and thoughtful about what they're doing. This is something that I definitely am strong in and am constantly going back to. Am I being purposeful about what I'm doing right now? Is the way I'm spending my time getting me to my goals? Am I on Instagram to try to build a clientele, or am I just screwing around, right? Am I on MLS learning the program and the process, or did I get sidetracked? So being intentional and purposeful with your time, your energy, your systems, how you're approaching things is super important. And it's something that you should be going back to every once in a while. You know, the people who've been in this business for 20 plus years, the ones who do well still go back and think about, how could I do this better? How am I spending my time? What are my goals for this year? How am I making progress? How can I fold this new idea into the way that I do business? How can I adjust to this new system, technology, change in the contract, whatever it is? But being really intentional and purposeful is going to get you really far. Just don't get stuck in the putting it on paper. You need to put it into action. So being purposeful with your time and energy and your goals, that's huge. The next one is service oriented. So you've probably heard me say before, come from contribution. This is really big when you're working with people, when you're trying to build those relationships, when you're trying to build trust with current or upcoming or past clients, is coming from a position of giving, right? So being service oriented or coming from contribution is huge. Have you ever been in a position where you're somewhere in a store, someone's trying to sell you something, and you can tell all they want is to make that sale. They don't care about you. They don't care what your needs are. They don't care how this is going to improve your life. They're just pushing it on you. Have you had that happen before? So that's how it comes across when you're trying to work with somebody in real estate if you're not coming from contribution. Anything you say and do, especially when you're first communicating with somebody and first building that relationship and trust, but also throughout, is to come from contribution. It's always, what's the benefit to them? What service are you providing to them? How can they benefit from this relationship? What are they going to get out of this? How can you help them? It's never about, I need that check. I got to get us to closing. I've got a bill to pay. Whatever it is, I got to hit my numbers. That people can read that stuff from a mile away and they will go running. So you talk to somebody, you think everything's cool, you try to follow up, you hear nothing. Well, be thoughtful about how that conversation went. If you're not coming from contribution, if you're not service oriented, people will know and they're not going to respond well to it. So just be really thoughtful about that. And in conjunction with that, I think coming from an abundance mindset will help you feel more comfortable with that. And the biggest thing with that is it's very easy to see other people having success and feeling like, oh God, there's like no houses left to sell, or there's no buyers left to work with. And I just, I thought I had somebody, I don't. I only got like 2 people right now and they're barely doing anything. And how am I going to hit these goals? And, just feeling that lack is going to send you spiraling, and it's going to make you more desperate, and it's going to be harder to come from contribution. So really come from a perspective of abundance. There's plenty of business for everybody. There's a ton of real estate agents out there who don't do any business at all or next to none. There's room for you in this space. There's room for you to hit huge goals. Come from abundance. There are people out there who want to work with you. It doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. It might be a longer game, but you got to always have a number of eggs in the basket that are at different stages, right? Not everything's going to hatch at once, but just understand that anybody you're in contact with, any relationship you're building, that could lead to somebody you get to work with. So coming from abundance really helps to fuel that being service oriented and coming from contribution. That's huge. Anytime you're trying to do something to get leads, think about, am I coming from contribution? How am I wording this? How am I approaching this? Come back to that. It will help guide you. Also, agents are very personable. And a lot of people get into this business and they're like, I like people. But that's not everybody. Some people are more introverted. They just love other parts of the business. And that's okay. You don't have to be outgoing. You don't have to be an extrovert of the life of the party. If you are, great, play into your strengths. But if you're not, being personable is very, very much about listening, carefully listening to people. It's not often that people feel really listened to, right? Attention spans in this world right now are pretty dang short. Everything's a 10-second video, it's a flash ad, it's whatever. Nobody feels listened to. So if you can get that part down, that's huge. And you don't have to be an extrovert to be a good listener. In fact, it's probably easier if you're not an extrovert. I know there are times I need to work on shutting my mouth and opening my 2 ears. There's a reason there's 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So listening, also being able to talk to people to build trust. And again, that comes back to your confidence. If you feel competent in these areas, these basics of doing your job, understanding what the market's doing, knowing the contracts, being aware of what the trends are, that kind of stuff is going to help you feel more comfortable, so that when you are somewhere and someone says, how's the real estate market? You can speak intelligently about that. And it'll make you more personable instead of feeling like, oh shoot, they caught me in a weird position. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what I'm talking about. So that can really help you build your comfort in talking to people and being personable as an agent. Professional. This is one that every once in a while I go on a rant about. When you are a real estate agent, you are a business owner. You are the CEO of your business. This is not a hobby. This is not a side gig. If you want to be successful at this, you have to treat it like you own the company, because you do. So you're tied to Keller Williams. We have awesome resources. This is where your license is hung, but your business is your business. It's not just a job, right? And it's why you don't come in and get handheld and walked through all the steps of how to do this. You're not an employee here. You're a 1099 independent contractor. Independent, you're a business owner. So treat it that way. So you make goals, you set a business plan, you're responsible for a lot of things, and treating that in a professional, put together way is going to get you very far, and it's going to make people think that you've been doing this a lot longer than you have. And that's really huge when you're trying to build your business early on. So that means you're setting up systems. You have some great resources here, right? We have In Command, we have a buyer consultation in Command, we have a listing presentation in Command, we have videos on how to put these things together. We have successful agents who are here as your resources. We have people who are very successful professionals that you can tap into and figure out how to make that your own. And that's super important when you're trying to grow your business. If you're just trying to sell 5 to 12 homes a year, fine, be chill about it. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to wear a suit every day. It doesn't mean you have to be crazy polished. I'm talking about being put together as a professional person who takes this seriously, runs their business like a business. How you do that is how you operate. It's got to be genuine to you, right? So it doesn't just mean you put on a suit and suddenly you're a professional. That's not what I'm talking about. It's about how you approach your business all the way inside the business out to your clients. That also means how you interact with co-brokes, how you interact with lenders. I'm talking about picking up the phone when you're negotiating. I'm talking about being thoughtful about how you write an email. It doesn't have to be an eloquent 4-paragraph thing, but you've got to like spell things right and make sure it makes sense and read it before you send it. Make sure you're sending it to the right person. And you've attached the attachment you mentioned in the email. Little stuff like that will either make you look like you don't know what you're doing or you really do know what you're doing. And there's enough people out there who don't look like they know what they're doing that if you do the basics, you look like a superstar. It's sad but true. And that will get you far. So just know there's always eyes on you. It's not just your client, it's the other agent, it's the other broker, it's the lender. All these people, you're building your reputation in this community. And the more professional and put together you appear, the better off you are. They're going to take you more seriously and trust you. That also falls into ethics. And I know we have updates on that on occasion. Maureen talked about it this morning. You know, being aware of what the laws are, what your license allows you to do, using the resources of the WRA, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, or the GMAR, the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors. There are professional attorneys who work for those organizations who are a resource to us. So if there's ever a time when you're not quite sure how to approach something from a legal standpoint, you can use us within the KW community, but also that's there as a resource to you. There's videos and a newsletter on all kinds of things. And if you really understand how those things work, you will really be seen as a polished professional in this business. It's when you're making sloppy mistakes that seasoned agents can catch. They'll start to think like, oh, this person I'm negotiating with, they don't even understand XYZ, and it's something really basic. If you want those agents to take you seriously, understanding those basic things is important. And I'm not talking like digging and reading and trying to find every little thing about it, but just get the basics down, get an understanding of what our license allows us to do or doesn't, and what our role is in the process of buying or selling a home. Next one is patient. Holy cow, you guys. I thought being a teacher required patience, and Lord knows it does, especially these days. But when you're a real estate agent, patience, 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 patience. You're going to grow your cup of patience so big working with people. It's not just your clients, it's your co-broke, and it's so easy to get really frustrated with the other agent you're working with and not be able to understand their perspective or what they have going on and just get really annoyed with them. Know that they're people too. Know that they have a life going on outside of this and probably other transactions. They could be new, they could be seasoned, it doesn't matter, but having patience with them is important. It's not about how you feel about them, it's about how you can serve your clients. So be patient. If you have clients who are having a hard time making a decision, do what you can to provide resources, but understand this is a big decision. It's a big purchase. It is not about you. It is not about you. So you have to be patient with your clients. Do what you can to make sure you're serving them well so they're not just floating in the ethos, confused and not making the right choices to get them to their goal. But if they need a little time, if they have to step back for a bit, if something happens in their life, I had a client yesterday who had written an offer on my day off on Sunday night, turned it in, talked to him the next day, and he's like, oh my God, I just found out that we're probably going to get furloughed. What can I do? Well, guess what? It's not about me. He hadn't had his offer responded to yet. And so we took it back. We rescinded the offer. We put him in a better position so that he feels comfortable waiting to find out what's going on with his job before we get that offer in. And then I talked about how this is a way better situation than if we had waited and his offer was accepted and then we were tied in and it would have been harder to get his earnest money back. So that, you know, used up a bunch of my time on my day off, felt real bad about it, and then wanted to take his offer back. Someone could very easily make that a rant, right? You could go around complaining about, oh, this buyer doesn't know what he wants. This is so awful. I'm so busy and this is hard. No, just save your breath, right? Come from abundance, be patient. So I told him, like, I'm really sorry this is such a bummer, but you know what? The stuff always works out. It always works out for the best. This house wasn't meant to be. I'm glad we could get you in a position where you're not stuck. And I'm here for you when you're ready. I'm patiently waiting. Whatever you need, whatever I can provide, I'm here for you. Do you think he's going to come back and work with me now? Yeah. I don't want him to leave that situation feeling bad. Like I'm mad, frustrated, he's wasted my time. If he has a negative feeling about me when we part ways after this conversation, he is way less likely to come back and work with me. But if I am patient and understanding and express that I am in this to help him, it's a benefit to him, and I'm coming from abundance, he's going to come back and work with me. And in the meantime, he might have a friend who's looking for an agent and he might send them my way too, because maybe he feels a little guilty. That's okay. So coming from a position of being extremely patient, but also being aware that, you know, if somebody's running over you, this was last week's class. If you've got somebody who's just taken full advantage, that's another story. You can be patient to a certain extent, but go back to that intentional and purposeful. What are we doing here? Am I really helping this person? Make sense? Cool. The last one is resourceful. This is huge when you're a new agent. Huge. It's like the number one thing. You come in, you're a new agent, you're like, oh my God, what do I do? You have got to be resourceful. There are so many great resources out there that did not exist when I started in real estate. I wanted podcasts.
You've frozen.
Crazy expensive, and there were limited resources within my broker, which was a prior broker to KW. You guys have a ton of free resources, a ton. I think the harder part is deciding what to tap into. So come back to that top 5, the things you should be focusing on, and know that you have resources within the launch program. You've got the helpline, which is Andy Stillman and Stephanie Minnick. So if you call or text the hotline is the best way to do it. For something in advance is the best way to do it. If you're really trying to learn about something specific, set up a time to go over it with them or review an offer. You have launch and productivity classes, as well as contract classes with Kimmy. You also have technology classes with Lindsay, and all this stuff is on our YouTube page. They are working their way through getting titles on, so you know what they're about. You know, I was mentioning to Grady earlier, videos on MLS, on how to use MLS. There is so much good stuff out there. There's information specific to KW. There's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which if you do not own that book, get that book. And I'm not just talking audio. This is a book you need to have on paper. There's a ton of good like worksheet style paper content in there. So if you don't have the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, make a plan to get one. The One Thing is another great resource. And there's so many good podcasts out there. I'm always happy to give recommendations, apps, things like that. The point is, you should have the drive, the personal drive to figure out what you need and where to get it from. Because in this business, no one's holding your hand. Like I said, you're the CEO. This is not a job. This is a business that you own. So if you want to find out how to do something, you've got to be resourceful. Figure out who you can ask or where you can go or what videos you can watch. There's so much out there for you. And it's a lot of how I figured out how to do my job because I didn't come to KW until about 2 years ago. So it's something you have to figure out to some extent on your own, but know that we're here to help. And you are in a really good position with a very strong new agent program. So take advantage of that. And if you're not quite sure who to talk to, use our Facebook group, reach out to someone else in the launch program. Your resources are endless. And it's just about you taking the initiative to get out there and find the information you need. It also means that you are somebody who is solutions based. So this business is going to throw some crazy stuff at you. You are going to walk through your final walkthrough and the dishwasher's leaking all over the kitchen. You're like, well, shoot, what do I do? You're going to look at a house and there's no lockbox. Like stuff's going to happen. And it's really important that you're resourceful in those moments because your client's watching you. You're there to help and represent them. And when stuff goes down, you got to be the leader. So being resourceful in those situations to find solutions, to be creative with the contract, which is why it's important you understand how it works, to figure out how we can come to an agreement in negotiations, to just decide what our next steps should be if something happens with the house. You know, do we call the inspector? Do we call a contractor? How do we go about this? I've got contractors, don't worry. And then you go to the page on KW Facebook, you type in the search electrician and you find all these conversations where people are asking for electricians and you use some of those resources. So being resourceful means that you're the one who's taking the lead on solutions, not just for yourself and your business, but also for your clients. That's going to get you very far. It's going to get you out of some tricky situations. And sometimes it just means you're going to contact a trusted other person to say, what would you do in this situation? But it's very good to keep that in mind. You're going to have to be creative and really find some interesting resources on occasion because some weird stuff goes down. At the end of the day, there's always a solution. Come from abundance. There's always a way to work through it. You just got to figure out how doable it is in the time frame you have, who you're working with, the money, whoever is going to have to pay for it has. So being that go-to person is going to help you become a rock star in your client's eyes. And that'll help you with repeat and referral business too. So those are the 8 things: driven, resilient, intentional and purposeful, service-oriented, personable, professional, patient, and resourceful. So those things are, if you can really master even a handful of those, a few of those things, it's going to get you far. But if you're aware of where you need to be or what you should be considering in any situation as you're planning, as you're going through a transaction, as you're talking to a potential client, come back to these things. These things are going to help guide you. These are going to help guide you and help you understand why those top 5 you should be working on are so important, why you should be treating this as your own business and taking it seriously. But also, once you feel like you're really in the position where you're working from those traits, this should feel more natural. It should feel good. It's not going to feel like work all the time. You know, I work a lot, but I love my job because I feel like these traits line up with a lot of my values and my skills and abilities, and the things that were hard for me, I've worked on. And that makes this feel very natural, and it makes it feel like something I love doing. And people feel that, right? Like I end up with more clients because they know when they call me about working with me, I'm going to be excited. this is great. I would love to work with you. It's not a burden. It's not, I have to go to work now, you know? So having those things in my pocket or understanding that I'm using all of these traits is one of the reasons I love my job. And it's one of the reasons people like working with me. So we've got about 25 minutes left to chat. I'm curious what your thoughts are or questions you have about these traits or what I've talked about with each of these, or if there's one of these that you would like to dive into further, let me know so that I can make note for future classes.
I think I'll just comment. I don't have a question, but I think that the piece around finding answers to being resourceful is such a big deal, because this is essentially you're building a business from ground up. You don't know everything. You don't know what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong half the time, you know, and you're winging it, you know, but you learn every step along the way, and having that mentality of I can't have all the answers before I take a step. Like, that's never going to work, you know, so I have to just kind of step in faith. And then as I step, I learn, you know, and to do the best to reach out, you know, and try to figure out those answers as I go along. So I think, you know, the piece about being resourceful and figuring out what the answers are along the way is such a big, you know, tip for me. Like, it's such a big thing. So thank you for that.
Awesome. You're welcome. And I know you're working on a new listing right now, so I know you're finding yourself needing to be resourceful. And you've probably noticed that you can't just rely on one resource, right? Like, you got to kind of see what is out there.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's from everything. I mean, and I was speaking with Andy Stillman. He was like, you know, you've got to be the polite squeaky wheel. And I'm like, oh God, I so am. And I feel so bad sometimes. But in getting going, I don't have any other way of figuring the answers out besides asking or looking on Facebook or Googling or whatever the case is, you know, and thank God for the resources that KW does have, because honestly, I don't know how agents would have done it without this kind of support, you know, so, but they did. So, you know, so it's good. It's good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and we know that you're coming from a position of trying to best serve your clients. And so that's when it's not annoying, you know, like you're clearly trying to find different resources and do the best you can for the people you're working with. And that comes through. So that ties right into this.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else? Anybody? Bridget. I'm having a hard time hearing you. No. It's like, you kind of sound like a gremlin a little bit. Really, really quietly. Do you want to put it in the notes? I'll check the chat.
No.
Oh, I hear you.
Okay, sorry everyone.
Hey.
To the point about being intentional and purposeful, this is something that I found to be really exciting about this career change. Just like a comment on that. This weekend, we were going to this small grill out outside, and I kind of like didn't want to go. And then I was like thinking about it, and I'm like, well, actually, everything serves like a dual purpose now. So if I go and I talk to people and everyone's going to say, what's new with you? And I obviously can, you know, easily talk about what's new with me. I'm a realtor now. Like, I'm excited that like everything Charlie Stellio and something everything now serves a dual purpose. Like when you see someone at the grocery store, when you do go out with friends, when you do this, when you do that, like it hopefully can also, you know, without being like pushier, you can bring up like they're going to ask me about real estate and I'm going to be able to tell them things. And I just think like that is one of the biggest things, is how now everything you do has a different purpose and you can do things with intention. And that's what I've kind of tried to make my focus just starting out here, is little things like I'm gonna make sure to say happy birthday to that person on Facebook and comment on this and just keep my face like out there and people seeing me. And I was already doing that before and now it just has a different type of purpose. So it's exciting.
Yeah. And Bridget, when you went to that cookout, did you like walk in and you were like, I'm a realtor now, ask me questions? Or did it kind of weave into conversation? Did someone bring it up to you? How did it come up?
Yeah, I definitely am very aware of not becoming that crazy pushy real estate agent. So like I first would really talk to them and what's new with you and learn about their life. And then of course they're going to ask me back. And that's when I couldn't casually bring it up. Like, actually, I'm really excited. I'm becoming a real estate agent. I just, yeah. So that's kind of how I would do it. And I know that something I learned in one of my like trainings was, you're always starting and leading with like learning about them and letting them talk. And then
That's
that's
great.
just a life thing, but now, yeah, I definitely like just would slip it in. And then they were excited for me. It wasn't
Yeah.
like a sale at all. They're genuinely excited to talk to me about it. And they're like, you're going to be awesome. It's awesome. And it's like, okay, that wasn't too scary to tell them I'm a realtor and not have them think I'm automatically trying to sell them something, because I'm not,
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like real estate, really, right? Like, why is HGTV so popular? People love real estate. So I think that's a great way to approach it. And that comes back to coming from contribution, being authentic about it, is not to be the pushy real estate agent. And it's really easy to just weave it into conversation or, have a comment on something. It's also a good reminder that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, social media or out in public, you're representing your business now. So people see you, and if you're acting a fool on social media, they're going to be like, I'm going to trust that person with my biggest investment in my life. Yes or no, so it's good to think about that too. But yeah, there's opportunities everywhere. Being really thoughtful about it and purposeful really does work. So that's a great example. Anybody else have some thoughts or questions? I saw something about listing presentation and
so as
command.
far
We can
as
get that
the
for you. Yeah, go ahead, Grady.
so with the traits, so you said you were previously in the service industry before real estate, or is that what you
Yeah.
said? So how did you
So-
transition those traits, or did you already have those traits and you kind of refine them, or did you
That's a good question. So I think all of us have different backgrounds, and there's some good things we can pull from those backgrounds. So for me, this is my third career. I was an educator first, and then I managed fine dining restaurants and service industry. So the things I've pulled from that, my coming from contribution is very rooted in educating and informing my clients, empowering them to make informed decisions. So that comes from my education background. My infinite patience also comes from my education background, but also was developed when I worked in restaurants. One of the things a few things I pulled from my service industry experience, that customer first, that it's not about me, that's very strongly rooted in that experience I had. Also, that when it comes to what's happening in a transaction, if things are spiraling, if bad things are starting to happen, to never be the one to crumble, to be the calmest one in the transaction. And I learned that in my training in restaurants when I was managing a very busy fine dining restaurant. That is not the place to be running around like your hair's on fire if something's going on, right? Every guest in the dining room can see you, and every server and staff member is paying attention to how you're handling the situation. It's the same thing when you're an agent in a transaction. If you start to freak out, your client's going to start to freak out. So being patient, being the one who's in control, being resourceful, that all came from that job too. So some of these things I'm just naturally inclined to. Some of these things I've developed in other jobs and then refined and kind of adjusted to this business. And, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. I started 6 years ago, you know, with the best of intentions, with a lot of drive. Not everything I thought I needed was lined up. And so anybody can refine and develop these skills. And I think whatever you're coming from, like lean into that, you know, whatever your strengths are, whatever your background is, there's a reason we all do this differently. We all get different clients. So just do what's genuine and authentic to you.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about giving the best experience to your clients, and I'm just curious if you and anyone else had any ideas of what you do to set yourself apart from other realtors, or how you can, set yourself apart and be better, or just give a better experience that people are going to talk about.
That's a great question. Anybody want to share anything they've figured out so far or observed that other people do?
I personally, and having heard from so many agents who are, you know, via Ignite and things like that, the number one thing that comes back from them is that whole serving the client. I feel like that's really what distinguishes. And whether you're doing a listing presentation and you're going out of your way to really try to, you know, you're not thinking about you, but really them, and saying, okay, well, how can I make this such a successful transaction for you? You know, how can I make this a successful transition for you? Same thing with the buyer side. So I mean, to Amanda's point, I feel like it's all about the client. It's all about the person and serving them. And I feel like that's what over and over again, whether you're listening to Peter Joshman, or you're listening to the Nikolic, you know, Paul Nikolic, or you're listening to Nikki Kuhn, any one of them, they will talk about, like serving the client and making sure that they're taking care of their needs first. So I feel like that's kind of, and then just, I think the professionalism, you know, being organized, I think can make a difference. But, you know, I'm new, so that's what I've seen.
Those are good. Those are good. And Bridget, I think, you know, coming back to that, like being authentic and genuine, is that there are things, if you think about, I don't think I've said this to our class before, but I look at myself as my business, and I think about it in terms of how I want a restaurant to be. And by that, I mean, a successful restaurant is one that you should be able to explain in 5 words or less. So your elevator pitch about how you operate, what you offer, you should be able to describe in 5 words or less, right? If there's a restaurant and your friend's like, oh, you gotta go to this place, it's so great. And you're like, cool, tell me more. And they're like, I don't know, it's like kind of like European, but it's like a nightclub, but they also have like tiki drinks, but then there's like a patio. I don't know, it's really great. Like, are you sold on that? And can you sell it to somebody else? No. So whatever you're doing should be really consistent and true to you. So like for me, part of the package deal is you don't only get a house, you also learn about the neighborhood and the restaurants there. And I probably know the people who own them. And I'm going to tell you about all the local businesses there. And it's a full package. Amanda freaking loves Milwaukee, love local deal. That's me. So people know that's what they're going to get. And everything I do is really intentional to that. So my Christmas cards are made by a local printer. My, you know, anything I do related to reaching out to my clients is tied to loving local, supporting small businesses, restaurant or food related, building relationships, building community. That's like my jam. So whatever I'm doing is tied to that, and it keeps me top of mind. So people reach out to me not only for homes, but also to find out where they should go for tiki drinks, where they should go for a special occasion restaurant, where they should go for a locally made gift. You know, I'm tying in the stuff that I care about and that's genuine to me. And you can do the same thing. Before you're even a real estate agent, there's probably stuff your friends know you for. If it's not good stuff, change it. But pull up the big stuff, the good stuff, and make that more your angle. Sarah Oberbrunner is an amazing example of this. She is such a caring person. She comes from so much contribution, and she is a master of keeping in touch with past clients and just blowing them away with things like sending them a gift card after they move in that has like popcorn and a red box gift card, and it's this little package deal. She sends them a card with glitter or with confetti in it when they get an accepted offer. She follows up with all of her clients who are veterans on Veterans Day. She puts flags in their yards for 4th of July. Like, she is always thinking about them, and they know it. So stuff like that, you don't have to do what she does. You don't have to do what I do, but you've got to find something that's really genuine to you that people just see as you, instead of you doing a thing that seems like you have to do it to get business. But it's just like, oh, that's so Bridget. You know, like, there's stuff people already know you for. And if you're not sure what that is, ask your friends, ask your family, like, you know, describe me in 5 words, and then figure out how to make that part of your brand, part of your business. Because the more predictable you are, the more people can easily explain you to somebody else, the more your business is going to grow.
One thing too, just going through this process pre-becoming a realtor that I loved that my realtor did is, and this won't be hard for us because we all have probably like no clients, but like I truly felt like I was their only client. Like everything was about me. And it goes right around along the lines with serving the client, but like at the inspection, they were there the whole time. They're not on their phone. You know, they're answering my emails, my questions. And it goes back to your point about patience, like so patient at all of the showings. Like we saw like 10 homes, you know, and I think that is huge when you really feel like you're like, you know, we weren't buying that expensive of a home, but we felt like we were like their person. You know, I don't know, just something to add.
Yeah, that's great. And again, something that a lot of people don't do, right? It's so easy to be this agent. Oh, great. Yep. Okay. Yep. Like, how often are we used to people only giving us part of their attention? Just giving full attention is special now. Not that hard. Doesn't cost you anything. Yeah, that's huge. Anybody else have some thoughts? What about, you know, of these traits, is there anything that you really want to dive deeper into I should consider for future launch classes? We already did one about resilience, but any of the other ones come to mind as something you want a little more on?
I know it wasn't really one of the traits, but like maybe something solutions based. Like if you do come across, like you said, like a dishwasher that's leaking on final walkthrough, or like you can't get a drop box to work or it's not there. Maybe not like a whole session on that, but maybe like a deeper dive into that, just to kind of have it in your playbook, you know, if that did come across.
That's a good one, Grady. And we do have, I'm trying to remember if it's on video. I think it is. I think it's from the spring. There was a panel that we did with Stephanie Minnick and Peter Gosman, I think, was on it. It was talking about like saving the deal. Martha Ola was on it. And we kind of talked through some weird situations. That was a great panel. I would definitely recommend going back to that. I'll see if I can find out when that was. But I'm pretty sure that was filmed because I remember talking to a screen.
That would be on the YouTube channel then?
Yeah, it should be on the YouTube channel. It's I think it's like SOS Save the Deal or something like that. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, always happy to talk more about like, what do you do when? Because crazy stuff comes up, and it doesn't matter how long you've been in this business. Just when you think you've seen it all, some weird new thing comes up, and you just gotta like roll with it.
And I actually found it. It was in the oh, no, of course my phone went off. It's under Agent Masterminds SOS.
There we go.
So I found it. All right.
Sweet. Thank you. That's a good one worth watching, guys. Cool.
Can you dive more into the introvert extrovert side and the confidence factor? Because I can't see where a total introvert is going to make a good agent.
Yeah, it's that actually would be a good panel too, because I know there are a number of agents who might not seem like introverted people, but they are, and they've figured out a way to, you know, use that energy thoughtfully when it's needed. and also to leverage the help and energy and outgoingness of other people on their team. So I think that would be a good one to dive into, maybe with some other people, to get their thoughts on it. Since I am not an introverted person, but I'm married to an introverted person, I know the kind of energy it requires to really get out there and interact with people. But it can be done. You know, my husband owns his own business and he's an introvert. So he does things very differently from me, but he's still successful. So there are ways to make that work, but that's a good one. That would be a great panel. I should see who I can gather for that. Another thing unrelated to traits that came up this week that I think would be good to do, and we haven't in a while, is title. Does anybody else feel like title is like a foreign planet? Like, what is this commitment? What the heck is on it? What do I do with it? How do I explain it to my client? Our title company, Focus Title, Jenny from Focus, who runs that team in our office, is a great resource, and in the past has done a Title 101 in either productivity or launch. And so I'm going to talk to her about coming to launch in the next couple weeks, as hopefully things slow down a little bit for them. They've been working their tails off this year. But she's an excellent resource, and that way you could have questions for her and she could give you the lowdown on the basics, which I think everybody could use a refresher on once in a while. So I'm in the process of getting that set up too. All right. Well, cool. Well, this is helpful. I'm always looking for ideas for classes. So if you ever have something that you think would be good to dive into deeper, you'd like to hear more about, shoot me a text. Either we have it already or it's something that would be good to go into or go back to. And I'm open to your ideas. You know, I just come up with these things on my own based on the things that I've learned, the things that come up for me during the week. Questions people have asked me in our accountability calls. PS reminder, if you haven't done one of those or haven't in a while, just text me and set up a time. It's a 20-minute call. We can talk about your progress on your top 5, your goals, your goal setting, your time use. It's accountability. So it's an opportunity to have a due date for something, or a chance to check in and kind of figure out where to go from here. If you're looking for help on specific things like how do I write this in the contract, or what's the next step with this, Helpline is a good resource for that. There are so many videos. I know they don't all have titles, but if you're ever wondering if there's a video for something, you can always reach out to me, or Mandy or Janine or the Helpline. We're here to help. And don't forget to use each other as resources as well. You know, not everybody started at the exact same time. And so people have different insights, different experiences. You know, people who've recently graduated from the program or people who have been in the business for years are really open to answering your questions if you are intentional and thoughtful about reaching out to them directly rather than just putting a blanket question on the Facebook group, though sometimes that's all you need. So don't forget about all the resources you have. You're not alone, even though we're all in our own little screens. We're here to work together. This is a community. Even though you own your own business, we're all here to support each other. Nobody gets anywhere by themselves, right? You see a turtle on a fence post, you know, he didn't get there by himself. So you see an agent at the top of the top 10 list, you know, they didn't get there by themselves. So we're all here to help each other out. All right, well, have an awesome week. I look forward to future classes. I look forward to hearing from you to set up accountability. If you have questions about Command, I highly recommend you reach out to Lindsay or Brad. And if you want some podcast ideas, just shoot me a text, or I'll throw some on the launch page. I think I did a while back as well. There's all kinds of good stuff out there if you just search for it. All right, take care. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Amanda.
Bye, everyone.
Welcome.
Just Daddy.